Okay, welcome back to part C, the final part in our interactive story in the What Happens Next storybook that we're creating, and this one is Joe, entitled Joe and the Magic Pencil. Right, now we've come up with pictures, we've come up with some storyline, and we've created forks in the road from each particular picture, take us off in different directions. And in the purpose of this particular video is to show you how we can create links from each of these red marker posts to particularly the right destinations. Before we do that, I just want to make one observation really. This is often when you're thinking of children's books, you're thinking of the text. You come up with a story first. I would venture to suggest that this is very much image orientated, image directed rather than text driven, because what I've done is I've come up with an image and then created a story around it. And I would suggest that you do need to have a good idea, a skeleton of this, where you want your story to go. But as I mentioned before, you need to be flexible as to where it takes you, and you'll find that as you're trying to come up with the right image, the image will stimulate an idea, and from that will come the story, rather than the other way around, the story and then you're struggling to come up with the image. It's fine if you're outsourcing all the images, but then you've still got to communicate the idea to the outsourcer. So for this type of book, where I'm actually using royalty-free images, I'm coming up with the right images first, and then that is stimulating. Rather like with this one, I came up with when I was looking through Fotolia for children's illustrations, I found this series of images about pencils, and that's what gave me the idea for dreaming of a pencil at school. And then there was another one I found about a pencil going into space, so that gave me the idea of going, there was another one, pencil on the ground, of which I would take from this link, but this one here gave me the idea, obviously, of going off into space. So be flexible, and I would venture to suggest that this is very much image driven. Find images. First of all, write down the structure of your plot. If you've got that, be totally prepared to be flexible. Then go and look for your images and then make adjustments necessary, and you'll find it works out much better that way than trying to write the story and then trying to come up with the images. You'll find it'll also be far more inventive and creative. And this, after all, is a world of imagination. The more imaginative you can, and send the child off into a completely unknown, a world of pure imagination, then they will love it. That's what they'll. But if you just go along mundane, everyday world that we live in type of story, it won't work. It's got to go into the bizarre and pure flights of imagination. All right, so that's that. Now we want to create the structure by using what we call hyperlinking. In fact, what I've added here, I didn't have it at the bottom of this one because that was the first page, but we always want to give them the option to go back to the beginning, and I think I'll go, rather than go back to start, go back to home, and then home can be the very first page. Okay, we now want to try and make these interactive, these links, so they will link to the right pages. And the way we do that is we come up here and we click on insert, and from there we want to click on bookmarking, because this whole process, in fact we use this same process when we come to the formatting for all the books that we use for Kindle, using the manual technique. There is an automated technique which I'll also show you, but for the manual technique using this A5 type documents, we use a technique of bookmarking and hyperlinks. So we click on bookmark, and up will come an option. I'm going to type in home because that's going to be the first point of reference, first bookmark we want to create, and we'll click add. And then we want one for instructions, so we'll click on bookmark again, and up here at the top we take that out and click instructions, and then we click add. And then we want another one for Joe falls asleep at school. You can literally copy that and click on bookmark and paste it there. Now I should point this out, if you find you can't click on add here, it continues to be grayed out. The reason for that, it took me ages to discover why that wasn't working, is it needs to have no gaps in between the words. Okay, it didn't happen before when we had home and instructions, but when you've got a longer title, particularly if you've copied it, we'll do that again, start again, copy, bookmark, paste. It doesn't come up here, so what we do is put an underscore or a hyphen. So I always like to use underscore, as that is my preference for joining two words. Okay, and you don't have to copy, you could have just put Joe sleep or something like that, as long as it makes sense to you. And you might want to just take it from the mind map. So now you see we've got no gaps because we've got an underscore, which is equivalent of a character, and the add has appeared here, so you can click on that again. So I'm just going to put teacher shouts, okay, for this one. Okay, bookmark, teacher underscore shouts. Okay, and we click add. Joe. And effectively you just want to create one bookmark for every scene, for every page. I'll just do it like that. What have I missed out here? It's not working. Yeah, it's there. Now it's okay. And then finally, one for this. Pencil into space. Where are we? Bookmark. Okay. Okay. Add in the underscores. Make that a bit shorter. Like that, click add. Now we've got bookmarks. Okay, we have bookmarked every page, every point of reference that we may want to go back to or travel to from any point in the story. Right. Now we want to make these interactive. So what we do here, we drag the cursor over here to highlight that, and we go up to, instead of a bookmark, we go up to hyperlink, and we've dragged the cursor and highlighted teacher shouts at Joe to wake him up. And so we go to bookmark, and we've got teacher shouts. So what we do is we click on that one, double click, beg your pardon, I went wrong slightly there. We come back to that, we highlight that, and we come up to not bookmark but hyperlink. Click on hyperlink, it'll bring up a page like this, and we want to select down this left hand column, place in this document. Okay, so now we've got teacher shouts at Joe to wake him up, and we want to click on this. We've highlighted that, and then we click OK, and that will insert a hyperlink. Do that, and suddenly we've got an interactive hyperlink. You can see when I put the cursor over that, it'll go control click to follow the link. And in fact, if we do that, I'll do a control click, it takes us to this page. Magic. Well, not really. It's quite simple, as you see when you see it that way. But from the child's point of view, it's magical because they're jumping around the page. So all right, let's do another one. So Joe continues to sleep and dream of being a pencil. We come up to hyperlink, and it's now in place in this document. Right, it's this one, fairly certain. So if we do control click on here, yep, we're here. Joe rides a magic flying pencil. And so for each and every one of these, because we have given each page a title, and then we have bookmarked each page, and then we're hyperlinking, back and forth, and we always want to have this back to home at the bottom of each page, so wherever the child is in the book or the adult are in the book, they can click on this, we highlight that, we go to hyperlink, and then we want this home one, that they've always got a way back, so they don't always have to go right the way through the story. Okay, now before we finish this, I just want to go back to the mind map, because we should have this almost side by side in a screen, but we should refer to it often, because the longer the story, and it's totally up to you how long you make the story, but remember, for each page you're going to need an image, and for each page you're going to have a scene that splits, so it could get wider and wider and wider. But what I suggest is you start to do this is, we've got this is a simple route, as it were. Joe falls asleep, teacher shouts, and going down this route, Joe shouts at Joe, he has attention, go home, and this could be, has tea and goes to bed, to dream. And you could make it totally interactive, because from here you could link to there. Actually, rather than creating a bubble, what you do is you put the cursor over here and click here to connect, and then let's see there. Yeah, we click, it says click and drag to draw a directional line to the bubble, so we can do it to that. So he's going in a loop back into a dream again, where he ends his day. Or you can just end the story there, but whatever you do, you want to end the story nicely and happily, and it's got to make sense that the story has come to a natural conclusion, a natural end. Whatever happens in here in space falls to the ground. Eventually he'd wake up and he'd be back in his bed. So maybe the final bubble is Joe is back in his bed, safely home, back in his bed. So we could have safely home in bed here, and this could be the final bubble down here, where maybe rather than this one we could just connect to this one, and then we can get rid of this one. So you can play around. Once you've got, you can get a structure, and you can even create the structure before you start creating the pages on the A5 document using the mind map, whichever way works with you. But I think this is a wonderful visual tool for keeping track of where you're going, so you just don't lose track, and it's good for when you're creating the titles that you use for the bookmarking, and then the hyperactive links. Back to the document. Yeah, so that's the hyperlinks, and I think we're there. By the time you've come to an end, you will have a very nice little story, hopefully, and play around with it as you move along. You'll be inventive, you'll be creative, and you'll keep changing it, and that's exactly the way it should be. As I mentioned earlier in the course, get kids involved. If there are kids around, ask them what they like to see, where they'd like the story to take them. And one way of doing that, as I say, is be led. be picture driven led. Let me just jump over and show you. Okay, I'm back over at Fotolia, and this is where I've sort of bookmarked the images that I liked, and see I've got all these pencil images. That's what gave me the idea of the pencils. But say you'd started in your mind with a mind map, and you were creating a structure and it wanted to be about a boy battling monsters. You could type up here monsters, and you might have just wanted to click illustrations rather than photos and just see what you come up with. And from that you suddenly look at this, you think, oh, monsters, that's a good one. A mummy, you could create a story about a mummy, and before you know it you can create the structure of a story about a mummy. And it's always quite good if you find one image that you like, you want to see if there are other similar images. So what you do is you click on that image and then click up here to see portfolio. It's no good just finding one image and then you create the story around it. You get a bit stuck. You want to find quite a few images so that you can create a storyline. You want at least sort of 6, 7 or 8 images. Okay, there's a lot of images here, but you can see there's at least 1, 2, I think there's 3 on this page. We go on to the next following pages. Yeah, there's more. So there would be enough to have a whole story segment and sequence about mummies, monsters, or furry animals, Furbies. Okay, I think that's enough for now. You get the idea how to create an interactive What Happens Next book, and we'll move on to the next technique in the next video, and I'll see you then.